full-bodied apparitions, shadow figures, voices, footsteps, noises, poltergeist activity.
I swear something just walked past behind me.
What was it like when you heard, I assume, sirens, people running, shouting, bringing in wounded soldiers, wounded airmen?
In one of the B-17 bombers?
And someone pulled me back then. That's twice that's happened. I thought I was going to lose my balance. That's why I grabbed onto that gun.
Oh, what was that?
What was that? They're here to help us contact you. They won't harm you.
Yes, sir, yes, I've been poisoned. Manufactured record. Yes, sir. Go. Yes, sir, yes, sir. Yes, sir, yes, sir. Here we go. Yes, sir, yes, sir. Here we go. It's like a light is in my face, but I can't fall for you. I close my eyes and drift away. I've overdosed on you. Then you wake up dead one day.
RAF Ridgewell is a former Royal Air Force station that is located 7.5 miles northwest of Halstead, England. Construction began in the autumn of 1941 and the airfield was opened in December 1942. At this peak time, a new airfield was under construction every 3 days. Station 167, as it was known by the US Army Air Forces, was initially an RAF station, and although many buildings were not completed when it was first used in January 1943 by RAF 90th Squadron flying short Stirlings. In early June 1943, the US Army Air Force arrived with the 381st Group of B-17 Flying Fortresses, who flew 297 missions with a loss of 165 aircraft. Ridgewell was an early example of stations completed to Class A heavy bomber airfield design for the RAF and had 3 intersecting runways of 6,500 feet each in length, 36 hard stands, 2 T2 hangars, and accommodation for 2,900 men in temporary buildings. The base was the only long-term heavy bomber airfield of the 8th Air Force and for the United States Army Air Force's use. The number of hand standings was increased to 50 required by a US bomb group. The station was part of the 1st Combat Wing establishment of the 1st Division and was the furthest east of its 13 heavy bomber stations. It was assigned USAAF Designation Station 167, station code RD. On June the 23rd, 1943, a serious accident occurred. 11 300-pound fused bombs were being loaded onto a B-17 named Caroline, when, for some unknown reason, one exploded, causing a chain reaction. 22 officers lost their lives, and 1 civilian. In the fall of 1944, Bing Crosby toured Allied air bases in England, and on September the 2nd, 1944, he performed a concert at RAF Ridgewell. The entire base filled Hangar 1, where the concert was held. The airmen and staff even hung from the rafters to see the show. On January the 21st, 1945, 38 B-17s had taken off on a bombing mission to Germany. On their return, 2 of the bombers, one named Egghead and the other named Schnozzle, collided. Both aircraft fell 1,500 feet. 18 men, who had just endured the rigors of combat over Nazi Germany, were killed. After the war, RAF Ridgewell was used for bomb storage from the 15th of July 1945 to the 31st of March 1957. It was then disposed of and sold. The United States Air Force retained the old aircraft hangars, which were used by the units from nearby RAF Wethersfield and RAF Alconbury for storage until both airfields were closed in the early 1990s. With the end of military control, most of the airfield was returned to agriculture, with the buildings and control tower being torn down. The concrete runways and hard stands were removed for hardcore, and much of the perimeter track was reused for country roads. We arranged to meet up with Paul Bingley, manager of the RAF Ridgewell Museum.
Okay, so we are in the former hospital building of RAF Ridgewell at the moment. So Ridgewell was built 1941, 1942. There was something like 500 different buildings on the airfield. The airfield was in existence as an airfield for 2.5 years during the Second World War. And as I say, this particular building is actually very interesting because this is part of 3 buildings that were used for airmen if they were injured or wounded in action, even down to things like bicycle accidents. Men were brought in here, illnesses and things like that. But the particular building that we're in at the moment was the medical inspection hut, which is effectively operating theatre. Okay. So a lot of operations were carried out in here. Major operations were carried out down the road in a place called Braintree. But yeah, this building has actually got quite a few stories to tell.
So I heard there was an explosion whilst 11 bombs were being loaded onto a B-17 bomber named Caroline. There were 22 deaths and 1 civilian. What did cause the accident?
This happened on the second mission that the 381st Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force was carrying out from Ridgewell. So it was early days for these men. And at the time, the bombs were already fused before they went into the aircraft.
Oh, okay.
Now, there's conjecture as to exactly what happened, but it's clear that there was a chain reaction. One of them exploded and this set off a chain. There were 2 explosions within 5 minutes of each other.
Because 2 other B-17 bombers, they exploded as well because they were nearby.
There was one close by that got pretty badly damaged by this explosion, and in fact the bombardier in that aircraft was killed by flying debris from the other B-17 on the next stand. So he was the only officer that was killed. The other people that were killed were enlisted men, so there were 22 of those, and there was also 1 British civilian who just happened to be cycling past the wrong place at the wrong time.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was standing there with one of my colleagues, and we were talking about the history of Ridgewell and some of the things that happened, and there were 3 commanding officers throughout the duration of the war for the Americans, and the second one wasn't immensely popular with some of the men here for one reason or another. So I was explaining this to my colleague Mike, and I just said, I don't think he was that popular. And with that, a picture frame that neither of us were touching fell over. And, we both looked at each other, and it was quite clear that we hadn't touched it. So that was the moment when I walked away.
Michael Land is a volunteer at the museum, and he has witnessed paranormal occurrences on many occasions. He has also captured these photographs of the apparitions. So, Mike, there's also been poltergeist activity in here where there's been parts of an aircraft that's been moved.
Yes.
And that's happened on several occasions.
yeah.
But you've got a story that you see
Well, we saw,
an apparition outside.
we
Tell us
saw,
about it.
We saw a shape of an airman in full uniform. It was captured on a photo as well.
I've also heard from the landlord that lives not too far away. On his property is the mortuary, and he's had a few friends over where they've seen shadow figures and full body apparitions of soldiers standing outside the mortuary.
Oh, I believe it. I've seen, I was with as I said, I host groups, so I experience that more than anyone else because I'm with them. And the one outside the mortuary, I looked down and I got this flash of light. I mean, it was so bright. You know what a camera flash, this was like same intensity for a shorter amount of time. It was so intense. And that was walking up to the mortuary door.
We now interview Jim Tennant, founder of the museum, who has many a story to tell. Okay, Jim, so what strange stories have you heard?
Well, one in particular from the headquarters building here, which you can't visit anymore because it is now a small housing estate. But at the time when we moved here in '83, it was a factory. It was the original headquarters building, and my wife worked there as a secretary for quite a while.
Yeah. As Jim is telling his story, another voice is also speaking. Here is the audio taken from my digital recorder.
And my wife worked there as a secretary for quite a while.
Yeah.
And then, my wife worked there as a secretary for quite a while.
Yeah.
And then all the men, they had kilns running. What they did, they recycled plastic. They had kilns running 24 hours. And there was always a permanent night shift. And the night shift used to swear that on occasion they would see a fully clothed airman walk through the door and then out through the wall on the opposite side, right in front of where they were standing.
Okay.
This was quite a common experience.
Yeah.
And of course, all the people on the day shift said, oh, rubbish, it's just a story, you're making it up. So on this one occasion, Jenny went to work as usual. They had a different chap on the night shift, who was one of the day shift guys.
Okay.
And as she came in, he said to her, I believe it now, because I've seen it myself.
Okay, so he saw it as well.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of, confirmation, if you like.
With only a few hours left to sunset, we set up several cams and a digital recorder to commence a daytime session. We've been asked to come here to speak to you, any of the spirits that are here, from RAF Ridgewell. We were contacted by Michael, who said he's had several experiences with the paranormal here in the museum and within the grounds. He's heard you, he's seen you, In fact, one of you knocked over a picture whilst they were talking about a certain gentleman, and this officer wasn't liked very much, apparently. So, whilst we're sitting here, is there something that you can do to let us know that you're here? You can knock something over, make some sort of noise, or if you want to shout out and tell us what your name is, please. Another way of letting us know that you're here, you can walk up to this device. It won't harm you or hurt you, but when you go near it, it makes a noise and those lights light up. So can you touch that device on the table, please?
Mike said that this piece of wreckage from a downed aircraft here moved one day for him, and it's quite a big piece of the window from the fuselage. Whoever moved that when Mike saw it, could you move it again or tap on it? Whoever moved that when Mike saw it, could you move it again or tap on it? Whoever moved that when Mike saw it, could you move it again or tap on it?
We have our static cams set up, and it was time to commence the nighttime investigation at RAF Ridgewell. Static cam 1 is in walkway 1. Static cam 2 is in walkway 2. And static cam 3 is in the rear section of the museum. So we're ready to start the investigation at RAF Ridgewell, and we've closed the shutters down on the front completely. We've got some static cams set up. So the reports are, well, full-bodied apparitions, shadow figures, voices, footsteps, noises, poltergeist activity. So there's so much going on in this building and around in the grounds. I think the problem we're going to have this evening is there is so much information, there is so many deaths, wreckage, injuries, it's just so much. Unless they actually come forward and give us their names, it's going to be very hard to work out who exactly is here. And let's hope they will respond. So as I said earlier, we've been asked to come here by the owners, Paul, Michael and Jim, to find out who's actually here They would like to know who's here. Now, any of the devices that you see that we've set up in this museum, they're here to help us contact you. They won't harm you. Phil, Mark. I just heard footsteps down the end.
Funny you should say that. I keep seeing something down there, shadow-wise, down that corridor to your right. And I've been watching it for a while.
It's down there.
Something keeps blocking it. There's a little bit of reflection on one of the cabinets, and something keeps blocking it out.
Okay, just hold on 1 second. From the back section of the museum, I hear footsteps. Here is the audio taken from Static Cam 3. They're here to help us contact you. They won't harm you. Hi there. My name's Jeff. The gentleman there holding the camera is Phil. And the gentleman just there is Mark. What's your name, please? I just heard you move. Now we're Now we're Was you a pilot in one of the B-17 bombers? An EVP is received to my question saying Bomber 15 or Bomber 50. Here is the audio with enhancements. In one of the B-17 bombers? In one of the B-17 bombers?
Just listening to the silence, the traffic noise has died right down. Oh, what was that?
What was that?
Was that you trying to...
That was metal.
Yeah.
It was like a shing, wasn't it? Yeah.
Within seconds of starting the next session with Phil, we all hear something metal move. Here is the audio taken from Phil's digital recorder.
The silence, the traffic noises died right down. Oh, what was that?
What was that?
The silence, the traffic noises died right down. Oh, what was that?
What was that?
I understand that this area was used for medical operations and procedures. So I'd like to ask if there's anybody with medical experience, perhaps somebody who worked here, somebody who operated here on the men, the brave men that fought, and perhaps returned here injured after their raids. Could you come and join me, please? This must have been, on occasions, quite a horrific place to work when men returned injured from the flying raids, as I say, or indeed from the accidents which happened on the airfield. What was it like? What was it like when you heard, I assume, sirens, people running, shouting, bringing in wounded soldiers, wounded airmen? It must have been horrific.
And so something pulled me back then. That's twice that's happened. I thought I was going to lose my balance. That's why I grabbed onto that gun. That felt really, really odd. It's like someone had two hands on my shoulders pulling me back like that. And it happened the first time and I thought it might have been me. So I stood in exactly the same position, both feet flat on the floor, and it happened again.
Did you just try and walk past Mark? Were you trying to get Mark's attention? Could you do it again?
It's happening again. So it feels like it's pulling me back. Oh, I'm going to move.
Let me stand there.
Oh, my camera's gone out of focus.
That feels bizarre, Phil. Do you want to swap places?
Yeah.
Just, well, you hang on a minute. Come forward a bit. That's it, so, yeah. That feels really strange.
Now, let me see. Are you going to do that to me? Or will you do it to Mark again? Why did you try and move Mark? Were you letting us know that you're here?
It's the strangest feeling.
Can you do it to me, please? Just so Mark doesn't think he's going mad. Or to Jeff.
I couldn't feel physical hands, but I felt like a force pulling me back, or more until I lost balance.
It's quite cold in this spot, actually, I would say that.
Yeah, my hairs were stood up on end all the time I was stood there.
You seem to have gone a little bit quiet. Is there a reason for that?
Got touch?
Yeah.
Hairs.
On my arm, just here.
Yeah.
And my hairs are standing up.
That is strange, that spot's just strange.
Oh, they're well standing up. Look at that.
Hang on, Phil. Yeah.
It was a stroke on my arm.
That is mad. Thank you for that.
Thank you for making yourself known.
We leave the museum setting up several devices. A laser grid, a 360 motion detector, a paralight which will detect any changes in the electromagnetic field, and a music box which will also activate if any movement is detected. We go to what once was the mortuary, as Phil and I will be locking Mark inside for a solo EVP session.
As I said before, I'm just going to let it quieten down and let the guys walk back into the main museum building, which was the infirmary of the hospital, where, whoa, I swear something just walked past behind me, a shadow figure. Did I just see you walk behind me? I'm sorry, there's loads of midgy flies flying around and they're all over the place. As I was saying, the building where the museum is was the field hospital for the RAF base, RAF Ridgewell, and unfortunately when airmen or mechanics or anybody passed away, excuse me, they would have been brought in here and stored and got ready for burial or taken back to where they were from. Quite a sombre building, this one. At the moment it's full of furniture, but it still gives you a very strange feeling in here.
Whilst Phil and I are making our way back from the mortuary, our static cam 2 in the museum is capturing lights. We know that this is not contamination from the outside, as all of the blinds on the windows are closed and the shutter to the main door is also secured. So Mark is down in what was the mortuary. We've locked him in there and we're back in the museum here. So this is the area where earlier we were hearing movement, all sorts of noises. At this moment, my digital recorder is picking up 2 EVPs. The first one is saying, "Let's get 'em," and the second one we cannot decipher. Here is the audio with enhancements. And we're back in the museum here. So this is the area where earlier we were hearing movement. And we're back in the museum here. So this is the area where earlier we were hearing movement.
I'm probably going to get eaten alive by these flies in here, and if you might see them on the screen, it's not anything paranormal at the moment, but there are so many around me. Could you tap on something for me, or move something? I've got moths and everything being attracted to the night vision screen I've got in front of me, and I can feel them crawling on me a bit, which is a bit unnerving, but I'll stay quiet for a bit and
So I'd like to speak to anyone that's here. Anyone that's here. Anyone that's here.
So I'm going to stay quiet for a little while, and if you could make a noise for me. I just heard a noise over to my right. Maybe was that you making a noise? And if you could make a noise for me. And if you could make a noise for me.
Okay, so we've just come out of the museum now. Phil and I have just done a session in there, and we're going to collect Mark from the mortuary and see how he's got on. We release Mark from the mortuary and prepare the SLS V2 high-resolution cam with 3D monitoring. Although we did capture figures within the museum, we have to disregard this evidence due to the many mannequins on display and reflections from glass cabinets that the SLS cam had mapped in as figures. we would like to thank Paul Bingley, Michael Land, Jim Tennant, and Robert Root, the landlord, for making this investigation possible. And of course, we also would like to thank the spirits of RAF Ridgewell for coming forward and making contacts.